My name is Jill Hanna, and I'm a reference librarian here, and I want to welcome you to tonight's lecture. As you know, the lecture tonight is Belief, a Powerful Component of Success, and we have with us the author, Mr. S.L. Young. S.L. Young graduated from the American and the George Washington Universities of America with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, degree in International Business with a marketing concentration, and a Master of Business Administration in Finance and Investments with Human Resources concentration, and a Master of Science in Project Management. Mr. Young's professional career includes approximately 15 years with Fortune 500 companies. He also taught a variety of college business courses, for example, business communication, introduction to business, marketing, organizational development, etc., for the past 5 years. Mr. Young is an author, blogger, professor, and founder of an educational nonprofit called Saving Our Communities at Risk Through Educational Services. There's a website called Socrates at www.socrates.org. The topics of his books include overcoming challenges, inspirational quotes, and workplace bullying. Mr. Young's next book on business ethics will be available in the spring of 2014. So, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Young.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming out. And so we're going to be talking about belief tonight. And belief is an important tool throughout all of our lives. So, who in here has had challenges with belief? Yeah. Who thinks that belief is something that is important for one's success? Yeah. And who believes that, or who thinks that they would have appreciated more conversations about building one's belief earlier in life? Exactly. So that's why this topic is important, and I'm thankful that the library asked me to come in to present this topic. So we're going to be discussing belief, a powerful component of success. And as I was introduced, my name is Stacy Young, and my pen name is S.L. Young. And this is a very informal presentation, so if you have questions as we go along, feel free to ask me a question. So, welcome, and for an overview for this session, what we're going to be discussing are the reasons that belief is important, the components of belief, the impact of not having belief, the benefits of not having belief, tools to move past doubts, fears, and worries towards actionable goals. And each of you has a sheet that I've already provided to you, so you're probably surprised there's a little bit of work, and there's actually going to be a little homework also. So, and then the use of belief to your advantage. So, let's start with the sheet that's in front of you right now. So if you can take that out, and we're going to fill out the top portion of that. And so we're going to list 3 barriers of belief on your worksheet. So what are some barriers to your beliefs? So we'll just take a quick moment for you to jot that down. All right, so has everybody had an opportunity to jot down their 3 barriers to belief? And I know the folks in the back will need to catch up a little bit. So we're just filling in the top section right now to identify 3 barriers to your belief or your beliefs. Okay, we'll just take another couple of seconds. Some of my participants over here were early, so they've already filled out theirs. Okay, you can continue to work on that as we go through the presentation. All right, so reasons for being here. So, each of you probably have your own reason for being here. You might think that this topic is important, no one's ever discussed it, maybe it's going to help you to achieve a goal or objective. So here's a bunch of reasons for being here. Well, some of you might be here because it's free, so that could be a good reason. Somebody didn't want to attend alone, so they said, come on, I'm going to this session, why don't you hang out with me? Maybe you follow someone coming into the event and you didn't know where they were going. You said, hey, I'm going to come on in. Hopefully you're here because you're interested in the topic or in the reputation of the library's events. It's okay if you're here because of curiosity, but maybe you're here because belief is a challenge for you. Or you're seeking to move beyond a current situation and toward a new direction, because belief is very important in order to do that. No one's ever discussed this topic with me. Or I want to learn more about belief. But all of those are great reasons to be here, but probably one of the most important reasons to be here, if I can hit the right slide, is this session is intended for me. So hopefully you're here for you, because belief starts with you. Nobody can build your belief for you. They can assist you in developing your belief, but belief starts within. So you have to believe in yourself. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. I'm going to go back a slide here. So generally speaking, individuals attend the session because there's a belief that the session will be interesting, good information might be received from the session, the topic is valuable, and other reasons. But a lot of times when folks are going to spend their time to work on anything, I always like to say that they like to tee things off. So you've got to make sure that you're ready with your time, your effort, and your energy in order to be successful. And then, as I said, do it for you. And then, so we're going to skip this, but what I want you guys to think about during the session is, how do you describe belief as we start to move forward? How do you describe belief, and what are your thoughts about the topic of belief? And hopefully you started to think about that a little bit prior to coming to this session. So belief can be a feeling that X is worth doing, right? Because sometimes we're like, well, this is something I've not done before, but I'm probably going to get some type of benefit out of it. Belief can drive action. It can help us to move forward into a new direction. Belief is needed to sustain your energy to continue to move forward, to be able to continue to make forward progress. So sometimes we're working on something that might be difficult. Maybe we're trying to pursue a college degree, and it can be very difficult at times to pursue that college degree, but we need a certain level of energy to maintain that commitment in order to move forward. It can help individuals to take the initial steps toward a goal. Sometimes the hardest part of starting a new journey is what? Taking that first step. And once you get over that barrier in your mind that's saying, oh my gosh, I can't do this, and you're willing to take that first step, well, you've taken the first step, and then guess what? The second step is a little easier, and then the third step is a little easier. And then by taking those additional steps, we start to build up our confidence, which will also help us to develop our beliefs. And then keep individuals moving forward despite overwhelming odds, setbacks, and challenges. And I think that that's one of the biggest power related to belief. Because when we're feeling down and out, when things aren't going our way, that's when belief needs to kick in the most to help us to pick ourselves up and get ourselves going and heading towards something that we don't even know what's on the other side. And belief is a powerful tool. And there's a lot of other reasons that you're probably thinking about for you individually right now. So let's talk about some of the components of belief, but let me just back up. How many of you have ever thought about maybe some of the classifications or components of belief? Have you ever thought about belief having multiple layers? Have you ever thought about that? So let's talk about some of them. So a belief can be a concept, a consideration, or a convenience. So it can be a concept. Is this considered to be true in terms of a concept? It can be a consideration. Is this true for me? Or it can be a convenience. Is this true for me at this moment? And I'll hold there for just a second. I see some of you taking notes. So concept, is this considered to be true? And then consideration, is this true for me? And then convenience, is this true for me at this moment? Okay. So let's take a look by using an example. So I talked about college earlier and its importance in terms of belief and making sure that we can commit to the process. So let's look at college. From a conceptual standpoint, individuals should pursue a college degree. We hear that all the time. So that's a concept that individuals should pursue a degree. The consideration could be, if I go to college, I might have additional career options. So that might be a consideration. But from a convenience standpoint, it might suddenly be more important for you to pursue that college degree if you know that that college degree is going to lead to a promotion. So now it's convenient for you to do it, because otherwise it was more convenient for you to do other things, but now there's some type of reward that you might receive from it. Now you're willing to take an action. Let's take a look at another example. So you can apply this to ethical behavior or unethical behavior. So unethical behavior is considered to be wrong and should be resolved quickly. That's the concept. Because if we know that folks are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, we hope that the situation is resolved fairly quickly. But in terms of a consideration, you observe somebody that's doing something unethical, but you're like, I'm not getting involved with that. So that might be your consideration, that it's none of my business, I'm not going to get involved with it. But it might be when you want to get involved because of a convenience factor, previously you wouldn't report it, but if there might be something that you could personally gain out of it, or some other factors, then it might be an opportunity for you to actually report it at that time. Otherwise, you won't get involved. Because in terms of ethics, a lot of times, folks know about things that are happening in the organization or in your life that are ethical or unethical, but a lot of times, it's in that consideration phase that we stop and we say, you know what, is it worth me getting involved? So, another example is a personal example. So I had this concept. I've heard of folks saying, I want to be an author one day. So there's a concept that says becoming an author is a recognized accomplishment. So that's a concept. So in terms of a consideration, for me, I was thinking, well, someday I want to be an author. So I said that years ago. And I kept saying it over and over again, I'm going to write, but I kept thinking about, man, what is it going to take? I don't think I want to go through that process, because it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort and energy. And then, once I had some things that were significant to me in terms of things that happened in my life, and I was able to share some of my experiences to help others as I was going through a process myself, then it became more real for me, more important for me to start writing and telling my story, because I knew that there was some additional benefit. So some of the things that you might want to think about as well, and due to the time that we have here, we won't get into this, but some of the questions are, what is the impact of not having belief? So you have to think about that for yourself. What is the impact of not having belief? And then also, what are some of the benefits of having belief? So we need to think about what are some of the impacts of not having belief, and then what are some of the benefits of having belief? Because each of these is an important step in the process of developing our beliefs. So if we understand what is potentially negative and what's potentially positive, we can work through it. So let's look at the impact of not having belief. So the first starts is, if you don't have belief, you can have a lack of motivation. You just don't do anything. You don't even get started, right? What about the second one? And it sort of falls into that category of woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? So when we are burdened by doubts, fears, and worries, then we don't get started. It becomes more difficult, or we put too much negative energy toward it, that we're taking the energy that could be used to move forward towards worrying too much about something. What about the third one? How many of you, because of your beliefs, said, you know what, I'm not even going to pursue this. This isn't even worth my time. You just didn't even get started. Has it ever happened to you? Yeah, it's happened to me. But why should I lose out on an opportunity because I have a little bit of fear? Because as I brought up earlier, once you take that first step, that's the hardest part. So to take a step and see what happens. And then remain in your current situation. So sometimes we don't advance and we remain where we are today, and then we don't achieve our potential. And I read an article just recently, and it was interesting. This woman had started a business, and she took out a loan to start the business, and then the business failed. And they interviewed her afterwards. And the article was great, but the part that sticks with me, and I've shared it like numerous times since I read this article just a couple of weeks ago, what she said was, no one has ever died from humiliation. But she at least took the chance, she took a risk, and she did it, and it didn't work out. But what I also like to add to it is to say, You know what? Just because something doesn't work out, it's okay. You know why it's okay? You did it first, but beyond doing it, you know what else is great about it? You probably learned something along the process. So maybe you could start again and do it again later, or maybe you can apply that knowledge towards something else and then it'll lead to future success in another area. So what are some of the benefits of belief? Well, belief can help us to make a change. That's one of the big drivers of belief, because belief causes us to take action when we believe that something's going to be different. So, making a difference. How about doing something better? You know, a lot of folks have invented products because they believe that they could build a better mousetrap. And just that belief that they were willing to get started led to new discoveries. Drive a new idea, which falls into the new discoveries. Move past a challenge. Maybe we're stuck in a rut right now, and having that belief helps us to get past whatever challenge that we're having. You know, and I'll give you a personal example. Last week, I got knocked on my butt. Just knocked on my butt. One of the worst days of my life. And I was like falling apart. And then I reached out to my support group. And then my support groups said, it's okay. It's going to get better. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden, I spoke to my brother, and he said, why don't you follow your own advice? I said, enlightenment. So within a period of time where I was saying, oh my gosh, this is bad, and we all have those moments, right? Then I said, this is bad, but it's not all that bad. You can do this. It's not that bad. Take a step forward and move past this. So I'm feeling sort of down and out, and then all of a sudden, within like an hour and a half, 2 hours, I had to change my attitude because I had a belief that things were going to be better. And that night, I actually needed to go to, because I teach in a jail, I teach business and life skills and a couple other things in a jail. I said, get up and go. And I went. Unfortunately, I couldn't get in that night because I didn't have enough folks, so they were on lockdown. But there is positive, because I got up. Even though I wasn't feeling well earlier in the day, I got up and I went anyway. But you know what happened the next day? The next day, I had to go give a major presentation for a group. And then I delivered that presentation because I said, I can't worry about what happened yesterday. I have a belief today that today's going to be better, and I believe that I'm going to be able to give a great presentation tonight. And I went and did it. But if I didn't have that belief to help drive me forward, then I wouldn't have been able to do it. So simply put, belief drives progress. So on your sheets that you have, your worksheets there, list 3 adjectives that describe the individual you want to be. I know you probably just thought you were just going to sit here and enjoy the presentation, didn't know you were going to work. I'm sorry, I'm a professor, you got to work. All right. So belief is important because, and actually before I move on, we're going to be using those adjectives just a little bit later, okay? So belief is important because fear can compel one to action, or it can cause you to be stifled from achieving your personal greatness. Do you believe that?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, you know, we could be so afraid that we can't even take that first step that I talked about earlier, right? Or we say, I'm right here, I'm afraid, but the alternative is so bad and I want something more, I'm going to move forward anyway. So I'd rather use my fear and turn it into positive energy and move forward. Yes, sir?
About this fear thing, sometimes you don't even realize that you have fear.
Yeah?
So how do you deal with that? Because I've been in situations where you just get like still, without being able to do anything, but didn't realize that actually I had fear.
Mm-hmm.
Only after I realized that that was fear, I could do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to answer it, instead of saying how do you address the fear, but I'm going to give you a different example that will answer your question. Then if it doesn't, you come back to me, okay? So earlier, maybe about 10 years ago, I was training for something. And the guy that I was working with said, you need to bulk up a little bit. You need to add some muscle mass. And he said that you need to go into the gym and start lifting some weights. And I'm like, I don't like to lift weights. I don't want to do it. So I'm thinking about this long, extensive process of going into the gym, spending an hour of my life lifting weights, feeling the pain afterwards, to get a little bit of gain. So then what happened was, he said, stop. And I was like, what? He said, you're thinking about it the wrong way. He said, can you do this? Can you go in the gym tomorrow and lift for 5 minutes? 5 minutes? I can do 5 minutes. So I went into the gym and I worked out for 5 minutes. And then he said, after a couple of days or a week or so, he said, all right, you've done 5 minutes. Now, can you go into the gym? Can we double that? Can you do 10 minutes? Well, 5 minutes wasn't so bad. I can do 10 minutes. So sometimes when we're thinking about doing things, we think about the entire or the end deliverable and all the things that need to happen in order to get there versus thinking about what do I need to do now to move forward. So by way of personal example, I wanted to write a book. I didn't know how I wanted to write a book. I didn't know which book to start. Going from the idea that I want to write a book and thinking about writing a book of a couple of hundred pages, it's a very daunting task. So what I said was, what have I already done that I can leverage? So in my classes, I have provided some life quotes. So I said, well, I've already written a whole bunch of these. Why don't I start there? And then I started with life quotes. It wasn't a book in terms of lots of words on a page, but it still was a book of quotes. And then once I achieved that first book, it made it so much easier to do the next book. And then I wrote the series of inspirational quotes. And then I said, well, I can do this. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And then I said, now it's time to write a book. But instead of thinking about writing the entire book, I thought about writing sections of the book, starting with an outline of what I wanted to write, and then I wrote specific chapters. And if that strategy doesn't work for you, continuing with the book analogy, I had read something that one author said, the way that he starts the creative process of writing is he creates the cover of his book first, and then puts it right on his desk, right in front of him. And then what he does is, in his mind, he's adding a chapter. The book is already done, he's just adding to it. So, by way of example, I'm answering your question, does that work for you?
Oh yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, don't worry too much. This is one of the biggest things, don't worry too much. You've got to believe it's possible without worrying too much, otherwise the potential for success can be impacted before you ever get started. So a lot of times, we put this, and I don't know if this is on your barriers or not, but we put this big hurdle in front of us, and trying to get over that first step is the hardest because we're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I don't know how long it's going to take. Do I have enough time? What about all the things? Why are you even thinking about that? If you don't have time to do the whole thing, think about what you do have time for and start there, okay? So I've already given you sort of the example about my books, but just very quickly. In 2012, I wrote my first book. Later in 2012, I wrote 2 more books. In 2013, I wrote 3 books. And then sales haven't happened the way that I wanted to, but that's part of the process because I made a choice to not try to go with a traditional publisher, at least initially, and trying to do it on my own. And it's very difficult because I was trying to follow the Tyler Perry model that says own your own stuff. But it's very difficult to own your own stuff when you're your own marketing engine and you've got to do all the creative and everything else. But I had read an article that said, even if your first book doesn't sell, keep writing. Because at some point, you'll write something that others will really connect with, or they'll find you, and then guess what else happens? Folks will find the other material that you've written, okay? All right, so for consideration, believe that your effort will have value even if there aren't immediate results. Because if you don't believe in your work, why should anybody else? Okay? For consideration, we're going to give you a few of these. Most people give up just when they're about to achieve success. They quit on the 1-yard line. They give up at the last minute of the game, 1 foot from winning a touchdown. H. Ross Perot. And I've heard it said a different way. It's like sometimes folks give up just that moment before they achieve success. They didn't realize how close they were. And then they said, you know what, I've been doing this so long, I'm giving up. Well, if you spent 2 or 3 years of your life working on all of these things, why are you going to give up now? And maybe you just need to change your strategy, but why give up on something that's your dream? But we'll talk about what we might do when things don't work out a little bit later. All right, so back to your worksheet, sorry. All right, so fill in the blanks with the adjectives that were written on your paper earlier in the session. So you wrote down 3 adjectives, right? So I think it's in the second section, I believe there, or maybe it's the third section. Use the space below. So in the third section there, you're going to write I am, and then fill in the adjective. I am, fill in the adjective, and I am, fill in the adjective. So I'll give you just a moment to do that while I sneak over here and grab some water. And then we'll use these sentences again later. So if you want to change, change starts with you. That's where it starts. And what I like to say is, you change who you are by first determining who or what you want to be. That's where change starts. All right, so now here's some homework for you. And I'll actually give you a sheet a little bit later. I was going to grab it now, but I'll give it to you at the end of the presentation. So remember when you wrote down earlier in the session your barriers to belief? So now what you're going to do is, on your worksheet, you'll write down on the left side your barriers to belief. And then in the next column, you're going to write down the reasons for these barriers for belief. And then you're going to take the next step to put down the action that you're going to do to eliminate the barrier. And then to have a little bit of accountability in terms of what we're writing down. We're going to put a time frame so that we can have an objective that's measurable. So we have a deliverable, and we have an objective that's measurable, and then we can see whether we've done it or not. Any questions on the worksheet?
You said you're going to give us that.
I'm going to give you a copy at the end of the session. So, how many of you have heard about a self-talk? Yeah? How many of you use a self-talk? You know, that's a different question. Knowing about it is one thing, using it is something else. So let's talk about it just a little bit. So a self-talk is a conversation that individuals have with themselves to help direct their thoughts, which could be towards a new attitude or a change in previous beliefs. Do you believe that by having a conversation with yourself, you can reprogram your mind? Yeah. You know, life is sort of interesting because when we were born, our parents were really happy. They were really happy that we were born. And they're like, oh, little Johnny, we love little Johnny. He's great to have in the world. And then what were they waiting for? Oh, I can't wait for you to, well, talk or to crawl and then to walk. But what happens when little Johnny starts crawling? Starts getting into stuff. And then what do we start programming into little Johnny very early in life? Stop! No! Don't! Can't! Right? All of those words. So our self-talks will help start reprogramming all of those things that happen. All right, so why is self-talk important? Because it helps to override the negative thoughts or commentaries from others. And it could be from your parents, it could be from your teachers, and sometimes the worst critic, ourselves, right? And then it creates positive thoughts and intentions. So what we're doing is we're reprogramming our mind to direct our thoughts, energies, and behavior towards what we want to achieve. And hopefully our self-talk is positive. We don't want to be negative self-talks, right? You know, how many times have you done it personally or heard someone say, man, you're an idiot! Why did you do that? Is that the type of talk that you want? It should be. But I was about to tell you one, but I'll tell you a little bit later. All right, I got to hold something back for you. All right, so, and let's think about this. So if we have a self-talk, our brain processes it four times. Have you ever thought about that? So this is if you say it, you speak it, you say it aloud. So what happens first? When you have a self-talk, what's the first step of a self-talk? you think it. And then, if we're saying it out loud, we speak it. And then, once we speak it, we hear it. And then, once we hear it, we process it. That's 4 times that we're using our self-talk. So it's thought, it's spoken, it's heard, it's processed. So, if we look at a self-talk by the numbers, if we use our self-talk once a day, so if we have a self-talk and we use it once a day 3 times, we've now processed it 12 times. Twice a day, 6 times, and we've processed it 24 times. And if we do it 3 times a day, 9 times, and we've processed it 36 times. So, what's the power of a self-talk? It's a powerful tool to reprogram our thoughts, and most importantly, our beliefs. So, my first self-talk. I was, you probably won't believe this as I tell you, but I was very, very shy. But I've learned to overcome it, obviously. And so when I was really, really shy, I didn't want to do presentations or anything else. And I don't even know where I found out about self-talks, but I said, okay, I'm going to develop a self-talk for myself. And what I did was, I created a self-talk that said, what I would do is I would stand in front of the mirror several times a day, and as I stood in front of the mirror, looking myself in the eye, having a conversation, looking into my soul, I would stand there several times a day. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. And then I would say that over and over again, in the morning, at lunch, and at night. And then that was what I used to help reprogram my thoughts and my behavior and my energy also towards positive direction, towards what I wanted to accomplish. So that was my first self-talk. So my past self-talk, and this is a self-talk that I wrote in 2011, November of 2011, before I had written a book, right? My self-talk was, you're wasting time doing stupid things and not being the individual that you're meant to be. That was my self-talk in November of 2011. The reason that that self-talk is really significant is in 2012, I started to change my actions and my behavior. It took about half a year to get started, but I got started. So I wrote my first book, then I wrote my second book, and then it just started, starting to move forward, and then I got comfortable doing it. And as I became comfortable doing it, I wrote more books. So over a period of about a year and a half, I've written about 6 books, working on my 7th book right now that I'm just finishing up. But I've also started my nonprofit. So I had never even thought, working in a jail wasn't even on my radar. Not even on my radar. But after I wrote my inspirational books, friends said to me, your books would be good to work with the inmates. And I was like, inmates? I'm not going to any jail, you gotta be kidding me. But how I often respond to things when folks plant a seed, because I always call it planting a seed. So they plant a seed in my head, and then I kept processing it. And I kept processing it. And originally it was like, ain't no way, to, well, maybe someday. Well, why don't I go talk to them? And then I went into the jail, and I still wasn't sure if it was for me. But let me just step us away from the presentation for just a moment, because this might be a powerful experience that might help you on your journey as well. So I went into the jail, and I'm walking around the jail, trying to make a decision whether I wanted to participate in programs at the jail, talking to the coordinators there, just thinking we're going to have a conversation. Because if you've never been on the inside of the jail, it's a different environment once you go inside. And we sometimes we get blocked by what we see, and then our perception of what we see becomes very difficult to get past. And so when you see gentlemen or ladies walking around in these uniforms, there's a different feeling about who they are, why they're there, and what you think about them. So we walked out of this protected area, if you will, and as I was getting ready to leave, the coordinator asked me, do you want to go see a housing unit? And I was like, okay. why not? But I'm sort of like, oh, I hadn't mentally prepared myself for this. And so we go down to a unit that I would potentially be working with, actually I'm working with today. And we get there, and then there was a door, and then a corridor in between, and then there was a door, and then you could see the inmate, so you could see all the way through. So I'm like, oh, okay, this looks good. Then the next thing, it was like, swipe. And I'm like, oh, maybe we're just going in between doors. So then I walk in, and now we're in between doors. And I'm in, and I'm like, okay, well, it's similar to what I have seen on TV on Locked Up. Okay, but a little bit different because there were people actively in front of me, not too far, that I could see through the protected glass. And then the next thing, there was another swipe. And I'm thinking, uh-oh. And then the door opened, and they're like, let's go in. I wasn't afraid, but I was apprehensive because I hadn't been in a jail environment, and I hadn't mentally prepared myself for it. But here's the incredible thing of the story, and the reason that I just share it with you, because my beliefs took me there, but by following my beliefs to get there, it allowed me to experience something that changed the rest of my life. So I walked in the door. So let's say the door just opened, I walked in, and I'm not, far off in my calculation. I probably went 1, 2, 3, and I heard, Stacy! And I was like, there's nobody in here that I know. And then I heard, Stacy! And I went, who's calling me in here? And then that slow look, because you're like, nobody should be knowing me, and then someone's calling you, right? And I turned and looked, and this gentleman stood up, and he said, hey, it's such and such from such and such. And I didn't really recognize him because he had changed a little bit, but he recognized me in like 2 or 3 steps. And I was like, hey, how are you? I wasn't going to ask him what he was up to because I sort of knew, but at least that he was there. I didn't know what he had done. I was like, hey, how are you? But here's the important part of the story. After I left the jail, I was emotionally touched by what just happened because I was on the fence, and I was closer on the fence to not doing it to doing it. And so my belief system told me there was something about that moment. It was a moment that said to me, it's okay. You already know these type of individuals because I had already helped some students in some of my previous classes that just coincidentally the semester before were going through the legal process. And I said, these guys aren't any different than the folks that I helped in my classroom. And I went out to Facebook and I wrote about what had happened. And I said, is this a sign? And almost everybody said it was a sign. And then at that moment I said, I changed my belief system about being worried about going in the environment. And I said, I'm going into that environment because I can make a difference. So it's just something that could happen for you as well. All right, so my current self-talk, I'm a superstar, right? You laugh, but why would I tell myself anything less than I'm a superstar? Because if I tell myself I'm the best of the best of the best, if I don't make it there, it's okay. But why would I say, you're sort of a good performer sometime? What kind of self-talk is that? What kind of motivation is that, right? My motivation is, I'm a superstar, and I'm heading in that direction. And you can't tell me otherwise. And if you do, I don't want you in my environment. Because you're not going to rain on my parade. Okay? All right, so self-talk consideration. If you want to be the best, your self-talk should be nothing less than that which directs your mind towards the most success. That's what the value of the self-talk. So your self-talk is going to direct your mind towards your future success. So if you want success tomorrow, it starts with your self-talk today. And then, of course, the steps you take along the way to get there. So your self-talk, again, assignment time. So the sentences completed earlier can be used as your self-talk, or it can be used as the basis to create a more in-depth self-talk. So if you look back at your list, first we started with writing down some adjectives, right? And then you said, I am, fill in the blank with your adjectives. Those are now your self-talks that you can use coming out of this session to help you on your journey. So your homework is repeat each of the sentences at least 3 times in the morning, afternoon, and at night. And if you can't do all 3, maybe it's just too much for you to do all at once, start with one of them. And that's okay. But that'll take you to the beginning step of your new journey, to your new destination, to your next success. Okay? So what's the power of belief? So your desire to change has to be greater than your desire to remain in your same position. Hold on, we've got to say that again because that's powerful, right? Your desire to change has to be greater than your desire to remain in the same position. And the other one that I like to use for belief's power is that belief can be the fuel that propels your forward progress without any concerns about the challenges that might need to be overcome to achieve success. Because remember earlier, what did we say? No fears, no doubts, no worries. Because we don't want to say, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. So that's the power of belief. So what's the secret to success? Believe it's possible. So we've got to start with belief, right? Believe it's possible. But you also need hope. Because moving past your beliefs, you got to hope that there's something better. So hope allows you to move forward based on a belief that something's better ahead. And then you got to take action. So what's the point of having, believing something's possible, hoping that there's something better ahead, and going through that whole exercise if you don't take action? Because good things can't happen until you take action. So do something with it. Because you've already spent, and remember I said earlier, I like to say things need to be teed off. You've already spent the time, energy, and effort. Now, take some action. And then, of course, if you believe, there's always prayer. So how do you conquer your fears to maximize your belief? I like to call it my P's. You need passion, patience, even though I skipped that one, planning, persistence, perseverance, pain, perspective, purpose, and the one that is the most important is positivity. Because using these P's are required to conquer your fears and maximize your beliefs. So how do you maximize your belief? So what's the value of belief? Well, it helps you to move forward. I mean, simply put, it helps you to move forward towards the unknown. Because there's a lot of things that we do, we don't know what that outcome's going to be in the future. But we got to take that step in order to get there. So if we want something better, we've got to move towards something that we don't even know what that something is once we get there. Or if we even want it once we get there. It can help you to move forward despite overwhelming odds, setbacks, or challenges. Belief is one of the best tools that you can use when you're having those worst moments in your life. You've got to believe that something's better. And then it's not required to move forward, but it can provide you with the confidence and determination to continue. And that's one of the real strengths of belief. So, remove beliefs barriers. So, you must remove all of these to truly believe. No fears, no doubts, no worries. Because if you don't eliminate these, they can be barriers, additional barriers than the ones that are already on your list to your future success. So, part of moving forward in life and developing your belief system, and I like to do this before I even get started because sometimes we need to test our resolve before we even get started. So what I'm going to do, and this is going to be another handout, again, I like to give my students something to take away with them. So test your resolve. So why is this important? So that's the first step. If you're going to spend your time, energy, and effort, you need to know why this is important. Why should this be done? And this isn't necessarily the same as why it's important. Because something could be important for you, but it's not the same as why it should actually be done. Because college is important, but that shouldn't be the reason that you're doing it. What should be the reason that you're going to college? Not because it should be done, because folks are telling you, why should you be going to college? Because you want to learn, because it's something for you. You're doing it for me, or you're doing it for yourself. All right, so what or who could be impacted? And it's nice to know also who could be impacted by the things that I'm doing if it's done or if it's not done. So let's just think, I told you earlier, I use my belief system to go into the jail. Well, I have some experiences overcoming challenges, specifically my educational challenges. So if I go in there, there's the benefit that I'm sharing my past experiences with others so that they can help lift themselves up and be inspired to do their own things. But if I don't do it, that's a group of men that I could have touched that I didn't do it. So that's just one perspective. What might be lost, missed, or compromised if this is not done? And this is opportunity cost, because when we're spending our time doing X and not doing Y, there's a cost. So when you're doing X, you're saying X is more important than Y. So you've got to take that into consideration. What are the short-term and long-term costs, including your opportunity costs? And then, what are the short-term and long-term risks? Because I always like to look at things from a risk perspective also. And then what are the short-term and long-term benefits? The expected and those that aren't as likely, that you wouldn't even have thought about if you hadn't sat down and gone through this exercise. Then what might others think about the effort? Sometimes we think too much about what others think about the effort that we're doing, and it can be a barrier for us to move forward. But think about what others might think, but don't allow this to be prevent you from moving forward. But you can also prepare yourself for the negative feedback or responses that you might receive. So it's, I always like to tell my students that life is like playing chess. You make a move and you've got to think about what's going to happen on the other side. And if you think about what's going to happen next, you're prepared for additional possibilities, because it's all about connecting the dots and what's important and using your critical thinking skills and all of that. All right, so what could be learned from the effort? And sometimes the best value is just going through the process and not worrying about what the outcome is going to be, but understanding that you're going to learn something no matter what you do along that process. There's going to be something that you're going to learn from it. It could be, I'm never going to do this again, but you still learned something, that it didn't work for you. And I like the third bullet. It's one of my favorite ones on the list. What is the worst thing that could happen? And most times, it's a lot worse than what you think. I just want to stop on this one just to give you an example. It's difficult to stand up here and give a presentation, right? And stand up in front of a group of folks. So if I was standing up here having fears, doubts, and worries, what wouldn't I be doing? Focusing on the presentation. And I've had moments where, I try to record a lot of my sessions because I'll post stuff out on YouTube, because if I've done it, why not share it with others so that they can benefit from it as well? And so I've had presentations where man, there was a moment and there was somebody in the room that was really, really tough, and they were looking at me really mean, and man, I was in my mind, I was stumbling, and it was getting worse, and I said, okay, bring it back. Because I was getting all caught up in that. And then when I looked at it on the videotape, what I thought was an eternity while I was up here was a second or two. But I thought it was a lifetime during that experience. So let's go back to where our beliefs can help us. So remember I told you I had a belief that I could go into the jail and make a difference. So that pushed me to move forward. But by following my belief, it actually helped me and made me better. You know why? I will not find a more captive audience, no pun intended, or a more sometimes threatening or intimidating audience. So do you know what it's, do you know what it's done for me over the last 6+ months that I've been teaching in the jail? It's made me a better presenter. Because when you're teaching in a jail and you're standing in the middle of a housing unit, no slideshow, just you, talking to 30-something inmates that are looking at you, and some of them, they have a choice whether they participate or not. And they're sitting there sometimes, and knowing that you can make it through something like that, and it's okay, you realize that you worry too much about stuff and just do it, and whatever happens, happens. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. And then, what will be achieved by the effort? So we think about that, and then taking all the previous questions into consideration. Is this worth the time, energy, effort, and the cost, real or perceived, to proceed? And again, I'll give you a sheet to take with you at the end of the session. And then ask yourself, is X worth your time, energy, attention, focus, effort, or anything else that's important? So, is X more valuable than your other options? So, if so, proceed. Go ahead and do it. And then ask yourself, why am I doing the other things? And if it's not, continue to work on the other things. So belief is an important factor in moving forward, along with the ability to prioritize and use time management skills, because they're immediate family members. So for consideration, too much time is spent worrying about others' opinions, especially from those that are not known. And it's getting worse all the time, especially with the internet, because there's a lot of very strong folks that are hiding on the other side of a computer when you can't see them face to face. And they wouldn't be as brave if they have to look you in the eye and say the same thing. There are a lot of critics, including ourselves. However, the most important critic, as long as it's positive and constructive, is you. Because who knows you better than you and the things that you need to achieve? So, for consideration, I love this quote from Samuel Beckett. Ever tried? Ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. For consideration also, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Friedrich Nietzsche. Martin Luther King. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Because a lot of times we could walk up on a staircase, it could be a spiral one, and that could be, a good visual representation of life. You're going up those stairs not knowing if those stairs are going to continue or what's on the other side. It's also sort of like going to Disneyland, right? You think that you're at the end of the line and then you go around the corner like, oh my gosh, it's still more. But it's okay. Just because you don't know what's on the other side doesn't mean that you shouldn't proceed. And I like to use this one too. And I've seen it quoted by different folks, but I've seen it more quoted as unknown, so I'm saying it's unknown. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the fastest lion or it will be killed. Every morning a lion wakes up. It knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. It doesn't matter whether you are a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be running. So the key message in all of this is that if fear is allowed to get in your way, you're more likely to continue to be the individual you are today without becoming who you could be during your life's journey. So how do you jumpstart your belief? So strive for excellence and not perfection. Too many times individuals strive for perfection. Perfection is just not possible. It's not achievable. So strive for excellence. I like to tell my students when they're in my class, don't worry about getting that A in the class. I'd rather you get a C and learn something than receive an A and not know what you did a week ago. So I'd rather you strive for excellence versus perfection. And then excellence is achievable because it reflects your best effort. And if that's the best you can do, good for you, right? And then seeking perfection can negatively impact your beliefs. Striving for excellence builds confidence. Yes, sir.
Because my English is not my first language, what is the difference between excellence and perfection?
Well, perfection means that there's no flaws.
Okay.
Excellence to me means it's the best that you can do at that moment in time.
Okay.
Okay? So, belief, the beginning. Even if you don't know it can be done, take a step anyway. We've talked about that several times throughout the presentation. Take that first step and then see what happens. It's better than not taking a step at all and worrying what could have happened or could have been. Understand that each subsequent step gets you closer to your desired outcome. Learn from your past experiences. Life is about, one of the things that I like to say is that life is about cumulative moments. And everything that we've learned before helps us to do what we're doing today, but helps us to do what we're going to do tomorrow better, if we learn from it. And then make adjustments along the way. So, yeah, you might be going to school and you might say, hey, I'm going to be a business major. And then you get into there like, this isn't for me, but I took this class in IT and that's more for me. So I'm still going towards that college degree. May not be business anymore, but it's IT. It's still in that same family of reaching my goal of getting a degree. So belief, parting thought number one. You can't be anything you want, and I know folks have told you all your life you can be anything you want to be. I'm telling you, you can't be anything you want to be. But you can work toward anything you want. And then if you fall short of your goal or your goals, there's still value in the journey. Parting thought number two. At times, individuals must step away, step back, or step up. Step away if you gave it your best and you just don't have any more to give. But you tried. Step back to regroup to try it again later. Because maybe this isn't the right moment for you. Maybe you need to get some more skills, more training, or just time-wise it just isn't right. Or step up to make a positive difference for yourself or others. And others. Not more, and others. Belief, parting thought number three. Do it for you. Do it for you even though others may question it. Do it for you while others don't understand it. Do it for you while others may challenge it. Do it for you even if you don't completely believe it's possible. Do it for you, especially if your effort will also help others. Do it for you because positive change starts with you. Parting thought number four. Your beliefs yesterday are important to get prepared for something today. Your beliefs tomorrow will help you to continue your forward progress towards success. Your beliefs today allow you to be the best possible you at this moment, and that's all you can be. I saw something on The Tonight Show. I think it was Matthew McConaughey on the last night of The Tonight Show. Any of you happen to see the last night? And he was talking to Jay, and he said the best piece of advice that Jay ever gave him for his career was, he said, I think it was right before his first night on, and Jay told him, just wanna be here. So if you're doing something, just wanna be there. So right now, I just wanna be here. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing after this. I'm not thinking about what I was doing before this. But right now, I'm gonna give you the best me that I can do at this moment, and that's all I can give you. And if that's not my ultimate best today, it was the best that I could give you right now. Belief, parting thought number five. Remain in the moment, keep your mind focused on the current work, and most importantly, enjoy the journey of discovery. Because learning is a lifelong process, and it's great. And I'll tell you that I love to go off the path. The path that everybody else has walked is great, but I find a lot of fun off, where nobody else has been. And that's where some of the greatest discoveries in life have happened, because someone has stepped away from being a conformist and said, I want to do something different. But we typically, what do? We put a negative word and associate it with them, and we call them radical or something else negative. But there's a lot of fun off the path. Sometimes we have to stay on the path. I'm just not one to color inside the box, to color inside the lines, right? Parting thought number six, perspective. The past is over. The present is now. The future hasn't happened. There's nothing that can be done to change the past. The present is within your control. And creating and executing a plan now will affect your future. Parting thought number seven, roadmap to success. Dream of possibilities, desire to do more, determination fueled by belief, drive to get through the tough times, decisiveness to make decisions, and dedication to achieve the dream. So in closing, believe it's possible, enjoy your journey, and be your best. That's it, folks. Thank you. But hold on, before I show you one more last slide so you can have my contact information, just bear with me just one moment. And the other part is, just be happy! Oh, my belief is good! Come on! Come on! Stand up! Come on, folks, be happy! Come on! Come on! All right, there we go! Come on, show everybody else! Come on on! Come on! This is true. All right. Thank you, folks, for coming. I appreciate it.